welcome to Who Corner to Corner podcast. My name's Jeff, and I'm joined as always by my good friend Paul.
Yes, hello, that's me. I am the good friend Paul. So you make me sound like a ship.
Ship, yeah. The good friend Paul has left the dock. So I'm just going to keep this intro short because we're not alone again tonight. In fact, we've got two interviewees for you to tie in with the release of the new Target novelisations. And we're talking to James Moran, who wrote Fires of Pompeii, and we're talking to Rona Munro, who wrote The Eaters of Light. So, Paul, we should just get straight on with it, I think, really.
Yeah, let's go for it. Let's not keep our good listeners waiting. Both Jeff and I are incredibly pleased and delighted to welcome to our little podcast the amazing author, Rona Munro. Hello, Rona.
Hello, lovely to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
So, we've got a lot of questions. We've got some questions which both Jeff and I thought up ourselves in one of our fever dreams, but we also have a bunch of questions from our following Twitter people as well. So, what I'd like to do, if that's okay, is start from the very beginning, your origin story, if you like, and just tell us, was it always, Rona, your plan to become a writer?
From quite a young age, I was about 8. When I decided
that is quite young.
That's what I wanted to do. Yeah,
I wanted to be an astronaut at that age. That never happened.
Yeah, I think that was another option. That was we all, didn't we? Yeah, but it was, I think, helped by the fact that I had a relative who was a writer, so I knew it was a possible thing to do. And also he really encouraged me. He was a wonderful guy called Angus McVicker who wrote some very early science fiction and is not so well known now, but he was very successful in his day. Yeah. So I kind of had that example. I knew it was something you could do and make a living out of, and it really appealed to me.
And was it science fiction particularly that you liked? Was it all kinds of other influences? Because you have a very strong kind of historical and mythical aspect to a lot of your fiction.
I think that's absolutely correct. Yeah, I think that's what I've always been drawn to, and in my writing as well. So there's that kind of bit where the science fiction intersects with kind of myth and fable and fantasy, and that's kind of the area of science fiction I've always been most drawn to creating, if not reading and watching. And historical drama and fiction as well. That's always been a big passion of mine.
It has. And what is it about that seems to fire your imagination, or is that too big a question for the short time you have?
I've had to think about this quite a lot because a few people have been asking that. I think it's, if you're writing something that's set in contemporary naturalism, it's actually quite limiting in a way, because the audience, then if the audience has any prejudice or any resistance to the ideas you're presenting or the characters you're presenting, they're very firmly in place. So, and also the detail of the world is very much the world that everyone else is in. So they kind of reject any variation on what they perceive as their naturalistic reality. Whereas if you put things back in history, particularly further back in history, or in the form of myth and fable, you kind of, it's like an act of guerrilla warfare. You kind of get inside under the kind of resistance people put up to empathy sometimes.
That's interesting.
And you can make people identify with human stories that they might not want to engage with if you put them in a form that they're in the habit of rejecting. You know, like, so for instance, if a young person doesn't think they identify with the issues of an old person, but you put that in the form of some kind of fable in which it's about, you know, battling the imminence of death, then they're going to go there. You know, so it's I think that's why I'm drawn to it. I couldn't have articulated that a wee while ago, but I've had to think about it a lot because I've been asked quite a lot recently.
You've been doing the kind of book tour with the release of Eaters of Light.
All virtual, which is wonderful.
That's pretty good, isn't it? Don't have to move very far.
Exactly. I'm sitting in beautiful Scottish borders, and
lovely.
Just do it from there.
Whereabouts in Scotland are you, Rona?
In Selkirk, which is in the Scottish borders.
Okay.
So it's a really gorgeous bit of the part of the world.
Beautiful.
Great place to have been in lockdown. I was very, very lucky.
Yeah. My mum lives in Inverness, so
right.
It's a bit higher up, isn't it?
Yeah, a bit higher.
colder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, actually, not at the minute, but yeah, generally, yeah.
It's beautiful up there. That's quite interesting what you're saying actually about the kind of naturalistic reality versus the fable and myth and legend, because it seems to me again a lot of where your stories happen is in that place of intersection where those two areas kind of meet. And whilst you it's almost like actually your characters are sort of battling or trying to come to terms with rationalising the strange and the unknown, the unnatural and the monsters and everything else with what they do know. Certainly in your Doctor Who story Survival, that's really seems to be quite core to it. You know, we have the naturalistic setting of Perivale, and then sitting on top of that we have this the Cheetah Planet thing, don't we?
Yes, which is sort of like your subtext or your going way back to that sort of seminal science fiction film, which I was very taken with, Forbidden Planet.
Forbidden Planet, yes.
I forget that. But yeah, I think that was my brother, who was a big influence on my early kind of imaginative thinking and watching and reading. He was passionate about that film, and I watched that very, very young.
I love that film.
And I think there's something about
right.
that the metaphorical kind of breaking through was very appealing to me, even at that age.
So how did Survival come about then? I want to take you right back to, was it 1988-ish, thereabouts, 88, 89?
I never remember. People always have to tell me. But, I'd done a fair bit of theatre work at that point. And the BBC were kind of running these almost recruitment schemes to kind of get writers to transition from writing for theatre or other mediums and possibly writing TV drama. So they were running training courses and workshops down in London, and I went along to that, and various producers and people came and kind of pitched to us, and one of them was Andrew Cartmel, who was attached to Doctor Who at that point as the main script editor. And I think I kind of basically just leapt at him and went,
threw yourself at him.
Please let me write for Doctor
So
Who.
that
And,
kind of
answers
my question of were you a fan before you wrote for it?
I mean, I remember watching William Hartnell. There was a special cushion on the family sofa, which was referred to as the Doctor Who cushion, so that I could cover my face at the particular scary moments. So yes, it was just part of my life, had been since I was about 2-3 years old. So
Brilliant.
yeah.
Brilliant.
So you threw yourself at Andrew Cartmel, then you begged him to look at your script, was it?
Yes. Well, no, I didn't. I mean, fortunately, the good thing about being on that scheme was he already had access to all that, so he was like, "Oh, okay." And I was part of the point of it was to teach us how to write specimen scripts and everything. And I think it was probably my grasp of all things Who at that point, it's very shaky these days, I will tell you, and my enthusiasm won him over, and we moved pretty rapidly to a commission out of that, actually.
And today we are joined by James Moran, who is a writer for Doctor Who and Torchwood, who wrote The Fires of Pompeii, and he also has his novelisation, his target novelisation of that very same story, coming out in a couple of days, but by the time you listen to this podcast, it might have come out a couple of days ago. So, afternoon, James, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Well, by the time you hear this, you should have bought it already.
Yes. Should have bought it and read it by now, yeah.
I have a child to feed.
Yeah. Buy 2 copies, and give it to a friend, So, James, we'll just get straight into some questions here then. So, when did your love of Doctor Who begin?
As long as I can remember, it's literally one of the first things I can remember watching on TV. I don't remember when I started watching because I was so young. My first memory is watching the first episode of City of Death, and I know I'd been watching it before that, but that's the earliest I can remember. So it's just literally always been in my life since almost since birth. I remember I ran in to watch it, and I was just so excited to start watching. I didn't sit down, so I just stood through the whole episode, and then it got to the end where he pulls off his mask for no apparent reason, and And then it ended, and I was like, "Oh, this is the best thing I've ever seen in my life." And my mother just, as usual, just went, "Oh my god, what? Oh, what's that?"
Oh, do you know
I was going to say, did you fall over with shock when he pulled his mask off?
It was more excitement. I was like, "Oh, this is amazing! He's got a big green spaghetti face, and what's going on? I don't know." Obviously, I didn't understand anything that was going on when I was a kid, especially some of the more complicated ones. But I just loved it.
Yeah,
it was one of those moments. I remember that one as well. It totally freaked me out at the end, because I think we're roughly the same sort of age, and it absolutely just killed me. I didn't want to go upstairs at all after that. It just
I loved that. Weirdly, that didn't scare me. But then years later, in Full Circle, when the Marshmen come out, that absolutely terrified me. It's just,
I was fine with that.
The mist and the way they sort of emerged from the water, and it just terrified me.
It's
absolutely
weird,
terrifying.
It's funny what gets some people and what doesn't get others.
But for me, I think it's with Scar, because he was just wearing like a normal suit, like a dinner jacket, white suit with a shirt and tie, and then he pulls his face off and all like green messy spaghetti stuff. That was like, what the blazes is that?
Yeah. So James, how did you get into writing, and how did you discover that you enjoyed it and that you had a talent for it? Did it come from your love of Doctor Who at all?
I mean, I guess. Sorry, I have a child singing in the background.
That's right.
I think I pretty much as long as I can remember. Again, because I was always writing stories outside of class and in class. So one of the first stories I remember writing was when I was 4, in like my first year at primary school, and the teacher read it out in class, and all the kids laughed and clapped. The other kids, I'm talking like I was an adult, all the other kids laughed and clapped, and I thought, oh, this is good, I like that. But yeah, I would we'd have story time every week where we'd have to sit and write a story.
Yeah.
I think it was just like where the teacher could just get a break for half an hour. Well, we get these these sheets of paper with like really big lines, and we'd have to carefully write down, this is a house, and draw a house, and that took about half an hour. And I just got so bored of that. I was like, oh, we're doing the house. Oh, great, house story again, brilliant. So I just filled both sides of it with a story about a cat and a mouse, just to amuse myself. And so yes, I guess that was my first sort of performed story, my first review. But yeah, my sister reminded me recently. I'd completely forgotten this. You know, when the kids draw those things with the house and the chimney smoke and everybody waving, and she said that I used to draw all those ones as well, but mine were always on fire or exploding. and I don't think my style has really changed since.
Yeah, you can see the horror influence.
Where that goes.
Completely.
Yeah. So before we get back into talking about Who, I'd like to kind of look at your other works as well, because Paul and I were talking before you join us. You've had a really interesting career, writing and directing as well, and doing shorts and winning awards and features and all sorts of stuff. So how's all this happened for you, and what steps have you taken to do these things, and what's been your highlights as well?
I just sort of fell into it really. Just kind of writing short stories when I was a kid, and not sort of dreaming that I would be able to make a living out of it, because there was no one in my town that was remotely involved in the industry at all. So I would just write my silly stories, watch Doctor Who, and I'd always watch the end credits of Doctor Who as well, and make sure I read every single line. My mum was trying to change the channel and she was like, it's finished. Like, it's not finished until the credits are over. Thank you.
I'm glad I'm not alone in that.
No. I still do that now. I always insist on watching all the credits. But yeah, it just kind of kept, it was always there in my life as long as I can remember. And then gradually, I sort of drifted into the script format, because I found a Time Bandit script book in a second-hand shop. I just thought it was a book of the film, and just got it home. I thought it had some pictures. I quickly flipped through it and then got it home and realised it was the script of the film. And I was like, oh, this is what they write when they make the film. And I'd never seen that format before. And there's a sort of a little explanation at the beginning of what all the technical terms mean, like what int means and ext means, and and I just thought, oh, this is a good format, because I always got really impatient writing stories. I just wanted to get to the action. I didn't want to have to describe everything and what everybody was wearing. I was like, I don't care, just get on with the action. And scripts were just they were just very, very sparse, and just be like, run down house, expensive apartment, that's it, move on. It's like, oh great, I don't have to describe. And they would, especially in that script, they would put little jokes in the action lines, and I just thought, oh, that's not going to be on screen, but that's just to make the reader entertained and get the reader in the right sort of mood for this kind of thing. Okay, calm it down. She loves singing, so I'm trying.
We're not going to stop her. Don't worry.
Yeah,
don't
stop her. Yeah.
Just don't want to get your copyright flag.
Well, it might be that.
So I just started writing scripts then, because I loved the format, and I never thought I was going to get them made or anything. I just liked writing scripts. I just sort of in my head I thought, oh, maybe one day, but I knew it kind of wouldn't happen. And then just sort of drifted through life, occasionally sending stuff out. Then I won a short film competition to get my short film made, and that was the first
Sci-Fi Channel. Or?
Yeah. It was the Sci-Fi Shorts competition for the Sci-Fi Channel, and it was the second year of it, and I won. I didn't win the first year, and I won the second year, and they made the short, and that was the first sort of validation that I'd really had, which was maybe I could get stuff made, and then maybe I could keep it going. And then just to sort of quickly summarise, because there's years and years. Got an agent. There was no Doctor Who hadn't come back at that point, so there was no sci-fi on TV worth talking about, really. There was the occasional attempt to do a sci-fi thing, and they'd be like, right, we're going to give you £5. Let's hire this prestige writer to do it, who'd clearly never seen a sci-fi in his life, or it was always a him. Never seen sci-fi, so they do something horribly cliched and awful, and they wouldn't have the budget to make it look good, so it looked terrible. And then they go, oh, there you go, see, it doesn't work on TV. We tried. What more could we possibly do?
The audience has spoken. What do we know?
Yeah, exactly. So I wrote a film script, and then that got made, and then by the time that was out, Doctor Who had come back, Torchwood was on. It was a whole massive TV genre revival. Except for horror, there wasn't any horror TV, and again, every meeting I had, they were like, "Yeah, horror doesn't work on TV. Nope, people just won't watch it."
I never watched Buffy.
And then a few years later, I know, but then a few years later, when there was tons of horror on TV, they were like, "Have you got any horror stuff?" I was like, "Yeah, I did, but it's kind of all been done now." So yeah.
You had your chance.
Well, exactly. Well, and also all the stuff I had, it was all like, well, people have kind of done a similar thing now, so mine just looks like I'd be copying them. So. Yeah, so it just kind of fell into it. That was it. Just I've fallen into every stage of my career, really. Just kind of, if I never really had a plan. I just kind of stumbled along, really.
It's interesting what you're saying about lack of sci-fi and stuff in there, because we're kind of talking 90s, I guess, or sort of 90s and the early 2000s ish.
Late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of American stuff coming through, but there was at some point Primeval. Or was that after Doctor Who had started again? I can't remember that.
That was after. It was everything. Yeah, it all came after the Doctor Who reboot. Yeah, because I got my agent in 2003, and I think the reboot came back in 2005 or so. Yeah. And then after that, the floodgates opened, and everyone
trying to do something.
There was no sort of sci-fi slot on Saturday night, and then suddenly it was like, well, there's the Doctor Who slot. We need to compete with the Doctor Who slot. Yeah. So it completely changed the landscape.
Again,
it really did, didn't it? Yeah.
I quite liked Primeval, actually. I thought that was quite decent. It was all right.
I loved it. It was great fun. It was like dinosaurs, and it's what more could you want?
Exactly. Yeah.
And a few, not that long ago, it would have been impossible to do dinosaurs on a TV budget.
Completely, yeah.
It shows you how much things have developed and changed, and budgets and all that in the last few years.
Yeah.
And was the story which ended up on screen, was that always a story you intended to tell, or did it come via various evolutions?
I'm trying to think. I think I didn't know I was going to get the Master.
Yeah.
And that was a huge thrill when I was told I would get to do that. And I think I remember, and it was the same on both episodes actually. Yeah. The biggest bit of restructuring is always around attaching it to something that could conceivably represent hard science if you don't poke it too hard. So the logic of how the creatures were moving between worlds and what the mechanism was of that, making sure the logic of that was consistent, that for me was the biggest struggle. And then once we'd cracked that, it was really... the other thing I think I was given was I was told that Ace was going back to Perivale. And I didn't actually, living in Scotland, I didn't know what Perivale was like. So I'd imagined some kind of gritty inner city, urban environment, hence the kind of motorcycle gangs and all that. And then when I actually saw Perivale, I went, oh, but it kind
it's a bit posh.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the thing about London, isn't it? Actually, those places are not very far away from each other. They do intersect and collide.
Yeah, and I think also if you're in that kind of cosy suburbia and you've got a rebellious side, then it's a whole other energy, isn't it?
Definitely.
So it did work. It definitely did work, but it was not what I'd imagined.
Jeff, have you got a question there? You're burning to ask.
Yeah, I do. Yes. So, how did you feel having written the story that could have been the final Doctor Who story? Because it certainly was, going out on a high. Did you know what was happening at the time?
No, we didn't know for certain it was going to be cancelled, though I think we all suspected.
Yeah.
We didn't know what order they were going to go out in, so I didn't know that mine would be last.
Oh, right.
And in fact, I was out of the country when that became clear, and this was long before the days of the internet, obviously. So the very last scene, Andrew Cartmel wrote that. I can't take credit for any of that. And it was, in a way, I'm glad, because I think if I'd been burdened with the responsibility of signing off Who forever, it would have overwhelmed me a bit. So I think he did a really cracking job, but thank goodness it wasn't signing off forever.
Yeah.
So did you, at the time you started writing the script, did you have ideas, for another one, for another series before the cancellation? Was there plans to kind of do more?
No, I think it was pretty beleaguered. I think the writing was on the wall. And also, I suppose, I still don't really anticipate ever getting a shot at things unless they're completely in my control and no one can stop me writing them. So, certain stage work, I can just go, right, or I'm writing a sequel to that and, whatever. But with Who, it's sort of not in your gift, is it? So I had one there. Which is probably just as well, because I think we knew it was probably a swan song, and quite a nice series to go out on. Actually, there were some very original episodes in that one. I think.
I think so. Actually, it was. I mean, for me, I know for a lot of other Doctor Who fans, it was just. We interviewed Sophie Aldred a short while back, and we all kind of said that it happened just at the point when Doctor Who was getting good again, when when the stories were not just about running up and down corridors and fighting off the bad guys as per X number of stories previously. They were starting to deal with more serious themes about kind of growing up and identity and sort of finding yourself, and survival is like the kind of apotheosis in some ways of that, because again we've had Ace's story kind of building. And now we get this story where she kind of has to connect with... I mean, I kind of think there's lots of different ways you could read survival, but for me it's about connecting with her kind of inner self, her sort of primal animal nature that we all have hidden under the veneer of society.
Yes, and also, I mean, very definitely I intended it to have a lesbian subtext. Subtext. Which, of course, back then you smuggled these things.
Absolutely, that's it.
Would see
very
them,
subtle,
and it did. In feedback I've had since, very satisfyingly, I think a lot of people did see that needed to get that affirmation. So that was, isn't it wonderful now that you absolutely don't have to smuggle it in.
Oh, definitely,
yeah.
We've got a question from M on Twitter who is at Sapphic Yazzie, and she asks, if Survival was written now, how would the story of Ace and Kara have gone?
Oh, I would have been explicit.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Ace and Kara fell in love. And it was a powerful, passionate, erotic love, and they were both well into it. And that would have been a tremendous dilemma, of course, for Ace. in terms of whose side is she on, given how dangerous Cara was. So I think a little bit of that charge is in there, but it would have been wonderful to have been able to blatantly engage with that, and that's certainly something I'd have leaned into if I was doing it now.
Yeah. It's also, very kind of, and I don't mean this in a bad way, so please don't take it like this, but it's made quite easy to understand, the whole theme of survival of the fittest, because all the language, all the dialogue used supports the themes and subtext. It pushes it along. I was watching it the other day, and there's very little that doesn't in some way move or support the story. It's a really, I love it. It's an incredible piece of writing, and it's always wonderful to see this sort of talent in Doctor Who, and it just brings me back to the crying shame that it was all cancelled at that moment. It's just
yeah, and it was really the fans that had kept it going for that last. Because the outcry every time it was rumoured it was going to. I think nowadays with social media that would have been amplified even more.
They wouldn't be able to get away with it again.
Well, maybe not. But the volume of letters was always of a number that they just couldn't quite. It was the fans that kept it going, and that we all knew that maybe that's why those last episodes. I think people were really trying their best because
buoyed up by that
you knew the people that were wanting it really wanted it and had kind of kept us alive. So you felt a responsibility to do your best, really.
So, James, how did you get to write for Doctor Who? I read online that you asked your agent to keep pushing you for it.
Oh yeah, regularly all the time. But it was like
she's having a great time there, isn't she?
Yeah, blimey, she really.
Let's give her a credit on the podcast.
Yeah.
I did. I was like any time I spoke to him, I was like, any chance Doctor Who? And he was like, okay, I'll keep trying. But it was very much kind of everybody wanted to be on Doctor Who. But then he eventually got me a meeting on Torchwood, which I was also watching and loving as a fan. So I got a meeting on that, and then just because it was my first TV job, I just literally put everything into that and tried my best.
You kept putting you're getting your agent to put you forward, and then Torchwood started.
Yeah, so I got the Torchwood gig, and I just thought I'm just going to put everything into it. If I never get another job in TV, then I'll just throw the kitchen sink at this. And I think they just enjoyed my enthusiasm and naivety, and also I was very quick. I've always been very fast. Yes, I'm a fast typist anyway. At one point, I was sort of between 80, 90 words per minute.
Wow.
This is back in my temping days, and super temp.
Fastest temp in Chiswick, yeah.
So I think that sort of endeared me to them as well. They were like, right, he's nice to work with. He's quite good, and he's very, very fast. So I think they just appreciated that. So I was sort of doing that job, and I had been mentioning it to them that I wanted to do the Doctor Who as well, and I just kept dropping heavy hints. I wore a Dalek T-shirt to one meeting, and I was just like, they're not going to give me an episode, but I'll keep
plugging
pushing
anyway,
and making her feel guilty anyway.
Just go with a placard or something like Cyberman.
Never do that. I just would never do that now. I wouldn't. Oh my god, it's so embarrassing to think about it. Like, what a pain in the arse.
But it's worked in other things as well. There's a famous story that Kate Winslet wanted to do Titanic so badly she kept sending roses to James Cameron until he gave in.
That's different. That's called bribery, Jeff.
Well, yeah, or blackmail.
I should have thought of that. Yeah, I should have brought in some Dalek donuts or something.
Yeah.
It was the morning of I think it was the tone meeting or the read through of my Torchwood, one or the other. And they called me in an hour earlier. Said, "Can you come in early for a secret meeting?" And so I had a week to think about that. And I just thought, God, if this isn't to offer me Doctor Who, when they know how much I want it, that would be really cruel.
You could kick off.
But thankfully, they brought me in. They just said, "Do you want to do an episode?" And I said, "Yes, of course." So and then they sort of immediately, literally the same breath, telling me what the episode was and how quickly I had to get on with it. Again, I think the speed was because it was May and they were going to film in September,
Right,
and they were already built. Like, they'd already decided what sets to build in Cardiff, and they'd wangled the deal for the location shoot to use the sets in Rome.
Yeah.
So I think they were just like, who could literally bang this out as quickly as possible, and isn't a nightmare to work with.
Yeah,
so you know.
So was Fires? Well, my question was Fires your idea or something that RTD had that you developed? But I guess they had a theme that they wanted. You know, if they were doing sets and things like that already. Yeah, they put the
sets, hadn't they? So.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, they'd wanted to do a Pompeii episode since the first series, since the Christopher Eccleston series, but it was just such a big expense and so complicated, and I think the timing just worked out that they were able to use these sets in Rome to sort of balance out the cost, and they were like, we can work it out, but we'll have like 1 or 2 cheaper episodes. We can bulk up the budget on this. So it was just like, we're going to do a Pompeii episode. We're going to have a nice Roman family in it, and we're building their villa now. You can have X amount of pages on these sets that we'll send you some pictures that you can use. X amount of pages in the villa to balance that out, and X amount of pages in the Wales countryside, which will be sort of the base of Vesuvius.
Right. Yeah.
We want some sort of fire monsters, and we want a scene where in the eruption some sort of escape pod or ship comes out in the lava. That's it. We don't have a story. Off you go. If you could get us something in the next few days, that'd be great.
How did you find that then? I mean, because that's right into quite a prescribed list of elements that you've got to incorporate. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It probably makes it easier. I think it is a good thing.
It gives you a bit of a loose framework to kind of flesh out, but still make it yours as well.
Well, I'd spent the week, like I always sort of had ideas for a Doctor Who episode, but I'd spent that week sort of refining them and going, I'm going to need to have a lot of ideas here to sort of pitch if they do offer me the job. But it's kind of terrifying to think I can tell any story in all of time and space. Anywhere.
Where do you start?
So being given those parameters, okay, and I knew about Pompeii already, so I was interested in the story. So it was like, I've got some parameters. I can work within that, and it's some of the thinking has already been done. I've got a time, I've got a place, I've got a setting, so that made it a lot easier. What didn't make it easy was that the Doctor can't come in and stop the eruption happening. That's going to happen. Yeah. So what is the story? that was the tricky bit. And then sort of figuring out that, okay, what if he has to set it off in order to save the world, and then sort of working backwards from that. Basically, all my Doctor Who stuff, I'm just doing variations on Genesis of the Daleks.
Although you did reference the Romans in this one as well, didn't you?
Oh, I had to, yeah.
Yes,
yeah. And I'd weirdly just seen that recently as well, because I did a few DVD commentaries, and I just watched it, so I was able to throw in a little reference to that. Which is, I just thought, he's been he thinks he's been there before, but he's in the wrong place.
These are people.
Oh my God, that's so loud. She's delightful. She's just very loud.
She's a performer.
She is, yeah, she will be, I think. So just kind of trying to work backwards from that, and that's kind of where it started, really, and then it all sort of developed from there.
Can I ask, what was it like writing Donna? So I've read things before, so like, for example, when the first wave of books have come out for each new Doctor, so like when the 13th Doctor books came out with Graham and Yazin, the writers were only given kind of brief bits of information about the characters and half-finished scripts and stuff like that, so they sort of had to, develop the characters, within kind of only rough, bits of information about them. So how did it work for Donna? Obviously, she'd been in, the Christmas Invasion, but what was written at that? The Runaway Bride. Sorry, yeah.
Well, initially it was going to be a new companion called Penny.
Yes,
and I don't know if that was because they hadn't cast Catherine yet, or if they were trying to sort of disguise the fact that it was Catherine. But they clearly wanted someone along those lines, because whenever they described Penny, they were saying that she's very much like Donna in The Runaway Bride. and sort of kept using her as a reference. And then finally one day they just said, okay, you can't tell anyone, but it is Donna. So just change the name in the file now and just go with Donna. So that made it a lot easier, because I was like, oh, okay, so it's someone I know already. I'm not trying to guess who's in their head and who this character is. I rewatched it, and I mean, she's so great in it. But the key thing for me was she's not Donna until those last sort of 5-10 minutes. Because she is massively changed by what happens, and that's the real Donna. And so I was like, oh, that's the core, and that's a much more interesting character, because doing the shouty comedy Donna in one special is fine, but I don't think you could sustain that over an entire series. No. So she is a different person by the end of it, and that's really fun to write, because she can do the serious stuff, but she's still very funny.
And she provides the moral compass for the story as well, doesn't she? Quite an important point there.
I remember thinking when Catherine was announced that she was appearing in The Runaway Bride and then coming back for the show, I thought, I wasn't that sure about it, but I said this before, Paul, didn't I? I was proved so wrong. And she's absolutely brilliant, and like you just said, Catherine can do the comedy, obviously, but she can really do the drama as well. And when I first watched Fires of Pompeii and reading the Target book, kind of reminded me of this, but it's such a great story, because it starts out all kind of fun and light and everything, and it's a real laugh, but then that core plot element of that the Doctor's going to have to set the volcano off to keep history on track and everything, and then how Donna reacts to that, it just, that, like you said, that last kind of 10 minutes or so, it changes it so much in the kind of dramatic sense, and then that, I think, really informs Donna going forward, because her arc across that whole series is really rich, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's important that she kind of does for him at the end what he did for her, and that she changes him slightly at the end of that, I think. And in fact over all of series 4, she changes him quite a bit. And yeah, it was a big, I knew that was going to be a big sort of tough ending to deal with, and because I didn't want to cheapen the fact that a lot of real people die, and I wanted to honour them and celebrate them, and just kind of go, look, this was really awful, but at least we've saved this one little family. So that, and I think that's why I kind of went so hard on the romp and the comedy early on, because I knew I was building to this quite horrifically sad moment.
There's a really nice bit in the novel where Donna's looking at, I think it's a vase or a cup or something, and then she suddenly kind of realises that this is today, and for us it's history behind glass in a museum, isn't it? And kind of, it really hit it home for her. But also when I was reading it, I thought, oh God, it's such a massive concept, isn't it? If you could travel in time like that, to see stuff that you just see in books, or bits of stuff in a museum or whatever, and then it's there. That's a mind-blowing concept, and I thought that section of the book was really nicely done.
Yeah, I mean it's funny. It's like Pompeii's a thing I've always been interested in, always been fascinated by, and just kind of thinking, oh, those poor people, but also they're only those poor people for a very, very short amount of their lives. Like they had a whole life up until that point, where they were just living their lives and having fun, going out for drinks and watching plays and having a laugh and falling in love and being silly, and I just really wanted to sort of get that across. And that cup moment, that actually that came from of all things a video game I was playing at the time. I skipped the PlayStation 4 because obviously had a kid and no spare time, so I kind of jumped back into gaming with the PlayStation 5. So I've been catching up on all the PS4 games, and and one of them was Assassin's Creed Origins, which is set in ancient Egypt, and I absolutely I completely fell for that game. I love that game, and I mean I was playing it for like a good 6 months. To get all the little side missions, all the bits and bobs, but there was just a moment where I was just marveling at the level of detail and how beautiful it is, and what an amazing experience to be walking through the past. And I was just was just trying to find one particular side mission. I wandered around and I wandered to a building and I was like, oh, what's this? Where am I now? What's all these scrolls? And I just went, oh my God, I'm in the Great Library of Alexandria.
Yeah.
And I just started crying on my own in the room playing this video game. I just burst into tears. I was like, oh, this is amazing. I've literally just walked into this piece of history, and it's beautiful, and it's like it really kind of got me, and I thought about that when I was like, how do I get across this sort of how big a deal this is for Donna? So I just so I kind of threw some of that in there because it really had an impact on me.
Yeah,
it's a really great bit.
Wait till you start playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey. That's really something.
God, I don't think I'll live long enough to complete Whoniverse.
I think I spent a year
so
playing
huge.
it. Massive,
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm very excited, but it's gonna take up the rest of my life.
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
Yeah. Don't keep making them. You've got other stuff to do. Yeah. So when the show was the episode was filming, did you get to visit the set, James, and meet anyone? Did they fly you to Rome? Is what I'm really asking.
They did not fly me. They didn't fly Russell to Rome. No, even Russell didn't get to go.
Oh, right,
no, he didn't get to go at all. He was like, but the money was so tight that even he didn't get to go. He was quite annoyed, but I don't think he'd had time anyway. I'm not sure even Julie got to go. Because it was such a quick 2-day shoot. I'm amazed they got all that stuff done in 2 days, including all the nighttime stuff with the ash raining down and all the street stuff, and it's quite bonkers. But yeah, no, I didn't get to go to Rome, but I did get flown on a train to Cardiff for a day to to watch. And they said I could watch as much of the filming as I wanted, but I was working on several shows at the same time, so I couldn't really. I would have loved to watch the whole thing. So I got to go and be on set for a day. So it's the sequence where they've just been chased through the streets by the Paravel, and they come in, and they're fending it off with water. And there's a bit earlier in the day where they're shooting the bit where Caecilius goes modern art and all kind of the family stuff, and then the arrival of the Doctor and Donna. So they were all on set. So I got to chat to Capaldi and Phil Davis and David and Catherine. I probably met Karen Gillan. I genuinely don't remember because at the time she was like in the background with 4 or 5 other people in the same robes, and she wasn't Karen Gillan then. No, she was unnamed soothsayer. In the back. So I may not have met. I don't know. But yeah, it was. And I didn't realise that Fran had been cast as Evelina, as I knew her from Severance days. Yeah. She was when they were casting Danny Dyer, they got her in to read opposite him to do some sort of back and forth chemistry screen tests for him. And I hadn't seen her, and then I was getting out the cab outside the studio, and then she was getting another cab, and she was like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "I wrote the episode. What are you doing here?" She's like, "I'm in it." It was really bizarre. It was really fun. Yeah, it was great fun. So I had another moment on set where, because the villa was sort of like a 3-dimensional enclosed thing with a roof and everything, and the steam vents and everything, and the TARDIS is right in it. And I just walked in, and I was walking around when they weren't filming, and I was like, this is amazing, the detail. And I kept like tapping things. I was like, that looks like marble, but it's just plywood. Amazing attention to detail. And I was just I was looking at the TARDIS and looking around, and I just thought, God, it's weird. It's an ancient Pompeii villa, but the TARDIS just looks like it just fits right in. Even though it doesn't, it stands out, but it looks like it fits, and it sort of does that anywhere. And then David wandered in, or they were about to get ready for filming. He wandered in costume, and I just said the same thing to him, and he said, "Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?" He said, "It's just like wherever you put it, it sort of
just works.
It kind of blends to the background, but it also sticks out." And we were just having a bit of back and forth. And I suddenly something in my brain just kind of went, "You are standing in a villa in ancient Pompeii." Talking to the Doctor about his TARDIS, and I just literally lost the ability to speak. So he must have thought I was bored, because the conversation just trailed off, and I was like, Yeah.
But the gravity of it suddenly just hit you like a strike
It really
of lightning.
did, yeah. It really knocked me sideways. Then I had to go and have a little sit down for a bit. It was just such a weird experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah,
It's true what you say about the TARDIS, because oddly enough, I was watching City of Death quite recently, just for one of my occasional rewatches, and there's that. Is it episode 2 when the TARDIS appears in Leonardo's room? And you're right. It just looks in place, doesn't it? It stands out, but it doesn't stand out. It just looks like part of the chaos in the set dressing and the furniture.
Which is weird, considering that it's got a chameleon circuit that's broken, and the joke is, it doesn't work now, so there's this weird incongruous police box. But now everyone just kind of goes, oh yeah, that just blends in. So it sort of works as a chameleon circuit, even though it doesn't.
But works.
Maybe it's on the kind of psychic level, perhaps, rather than the apparent visible level.
Yeah, completely. I mean, that's why I put in the modern art reference, because there's that bit when with John Cleese and LeBron
City of Death,
talk about it in the gallery. I love that, and then it just dematerializes and it just goes extraordinary,
exquisite.
It really cracked me up. So I thought I've got to do a little reference to that, just to amuse myself. I thought no one else is going to notice. Of course, everybody does. It's really obvious.
Well, very attentive fans, James, as you well know, being one of us for sure.
Well, talking of references, I was quite pleased that there was the mention of Caecilius's face.
Oh yes,
that you added to the book. With the Doctor saying, I like a strong face. So Paul and I were talking about it earlier, and wondered if there'd be a little mention there. So all the way through the book, I was like, there's got to be something that hints that this is Capaldi.
Well, the nice thing is that someone much cleverer than me, Stephen Moffat, had come up with that solution. So I was like, I'll just lift that and stick it in. Because people would probably be expecting it to be mentioned in there. I didn't actually ask him if I could do that, but I'm like, hey, it's part of Doctor Who canon now. What's he going to do?
Exactly. He's probably got half worked on manuscript for the novelisation of Deep Breath or something. He's going, you buggered!
Ruined it.
So you are, Rona, you do have the privileged honour of being the only writer to have written for the classic series and the new revived series. So we got, when we put out on Twitter that we were talking to you, we asked people to submit their questions. Most of those which came in were a variation on the question I'm going to read to you now. So this one comes from Chris at ChrisRuss1, who represents all the other questions that we got on this topic, so I've just picked his out. And he asks, was the writing process different between the two stories? So in other words, how had things changed between writing a screenplay in the 80s to modern day times?
Quite a lot in some ways and not at all in others. I think in terms of writing a Doctor Who story, Doctor Who's Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And the really interesting thing to me is however many regenerations there are, and however qualitatively different the character is, and the actor play, and all the different actors have brought amazing things to it. But the Doctor's the Doctor, and you sort of rediscover that you kind of know what that is, and that's the foundation that you're building it on. In terms of the writing process, as I've described it, the first time around, it was this little beleaguered, neglected corner of the BBC where it felt like there was like three of us in a dusty room in Shepherd's Bush, kind of trying to keep it alive and, push it out. And you knew you were going to have tuppence halfpenny worth of resources. You knew it was going to be the quarry. You knew, we were, not to diss the designer on Survival, but that's not the representation of the cheetah people we would have.
I have heard this said,
It was recycled from another production. So it was furry. And very hot, I think, for the poor actors.
I can imagine,
So come to it the second time around, and then it's this unbelievable muscular machine. And, you've got the studios in Cardiff, and the Doctor Who experience was still on the go then. And there's fans at the gate, and they've got a suite of office. It's this whole building dedicated to all things Who. I've still got quibbles about how much budget I got, but bloody hell, it was longer than I got the first time, And also, I think, because they were much more engaged in an ongoing story that ran over all the episodes. So the relationship to Stephen and to showrunner was different. So there were all those sort of series elements that had to be incorporated, which I hadn't had to do the first time around. So very different some ways and very much the same in others.
So how did the commission for Eaters of Light come about for you, and what was it like working with Stephen Moffat? Was it similar with Andrew Cartmel, and were they supportive? What was it like with him?
It was very different. Andrew was much more sit back and only intervene in what's necessary, and Stephen was running this beast. And also, Stephen is without doubt one of the most successful television writers working today. Yeah. And his grasp of these big, high concept, long running stories is incredible. I really admire that. So there was the sense that there was going to be much more active participation. So like, for instance, the last scene in the television version of Eaters of Light between the Doctor and Missy, that's not me at all. So all those long-running elements, Stephen was I did wonder. And then you kind of fit in around that. So that's quite a different experience. But I think, in terms of how the commission came about, I think I was really lucky in that he liked Survival too. Yeah. So when he was thinking about who he wanted to bring on board for what he probably knew was going to be his, one of his last seasons, then he was looking to, check in with people that he'd liked. So I was really lucky that he was a Doctor Who fan and he'd liked those episodes, and I think that's how I ended up getting the gig, really.
That's brilliant. So was the idea for the episode, was that all yours, or did he say that, we want something like this, because people talk about like Russell T Davies would have a shopping list of ideas that he'd give someone in and try and fit these into your episode. So how did it work in this instance?
I went into a room with about 17,000 people sitting around a table.
It's not scary.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah. And we brainstormed, so basically it was like, so what do you want to write? And then you start talking about kind of what we were talking about at the very start of this conversation. So the sort of things that excite me, the sort of things I'm interested in. And also the sort of things where that intersects with Who. Yeah. So for me, Doctor Who represents the stories that have been part of my life since I was 3 years old. And also, I think that's what I've always loved about Doctor Who, is you should be able to watch it when you're 3 years old or 93. Yeah. So it was kind of imaginatively thinking. So if you go back to that time in my childhood, what are the things that I was passionate about? And then I was talking about, my brother dragging me around kind of various archaeological sites and our search for the eagle of the standard of the Legion, of the Ninth Legion and stuff. And then I just remember Stephen going, Romans, we love Romans.
Yes, more Romans.
Yeah, they've got those costumes already.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So that was, so at the end of that, it was probably about a 2-3 hour session. We'd pretty well thrashed out what it was going to be, and the Rosemary Sutcliffe novel, The Eagle of the Ninth, and the things I'd done with my brother, and the environment I grew up in, the natural environment I grew up in. And that was kind of the fuel to get it all going.
Yeah. Brilliant. And anything with standing stones is a big plus in my book, frankly. I love those because they do fire the imagination, don't you? You start thinking about the people who created these things and why and what they believed in, and their rituals for the day, their habits, how they lived, all that sort of stuff.
And it's also the fact they've been there for thousands of years, the fact that people have been standing. So the Pictish standing stones, the symbols, nobody knows what the symbol means. Nobody knows what any of these symbols mean. So all the carvings I describe or we showed in the TV episode, or I describe in the novel, those are actual symbols that are on these stones. So they were being put up in right at the start of the Common Era. But you've got other stones that go back,
even further. But
it was the fact that all these symbols, there's this mirror symbol, there's this thing they call the Pictish beast, there's this various this comb thing, and it was like a candle with a comb in the end of it, and nobody knows what they mean. So I thought, okay, so I'm just going to make a story that explains all these pictures, and why not? Might be true.
You never know, do you? It might be true, but it strikes me again because I think your style is quite unique. You know, there's a Rona Munro style or a vibe that you get, and it seems to me that Eaters of Light has a very lyrical kind of quality to it, or that was like magical reality sort of thing. It's really beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, I suppose that. Yes, I would like to think that.
I suppose where I was getting at is that it kind of stands out in that season for that way. I mean, it's one of my favourite Doctor Who seasons because we've got such a variety of different stories, and we've got a great overall sort of narrative arc coming on. I'm going to ask another Twitter story, which is from Softest Butch, actually, who asks, and this takes us back to what we were talking about previously, actually, who asks, what was it like being able to write for Bill as an explicitly lesbian companion, having written previously for Ace? Although we probably actually did answer that, didn't we? I suppose, but was it a bit more liberating in some ways?
It was, but what was interesting, of course, was at the point I started writing, I didn't know Bill was going to be.
Oh, really?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
She was quite a late addition.
So I'd already done a draft in which Bill and Carr were having. It was like, great, I couldn't do it first time. I'll do it this time, right? Yeah. And then Stephen's pilot episode came in, and I went, "Oh, okay,
that's good."
So I moved away from that. So that was quite interesting. But what was lovely was to be able to write about it and not have to not feel that responsibility. It was like brilliant. She just happens to be queer. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and it's great in the story as well how she's kind of thrown on the back foot, where she sort of assumes that the Romans won't get the idea she's into girls, as she puts it, and I can't remember the character's name, but
now I have to fess up, that's Stephen, not
me.
Oh,
was it? Oh,
yeah. Because I read his episode and went, oh right, okay, won't even go, don't even touch that. I'll just, it'll be known, and she'll have her, and I think possibly because he was aware of the legacy of survival, or he wanted to put that in. But then what was nice was when he'd done that edition, I kind of went, oh, if we're doing that, I would like to do it a bit more substantially. So when it came to the novelisation, I was able to give Lucius a proper love story and really make that not just a little aside, but a big part of what the story was about.
It is. It's core to the novel, isn't it? What I love about the novelisation is that we see Carr and her growing up, and then we see Lucius as well, and the two collide, don't they, in this confrontation, and then of course they get together and defeat the monster. But having the knowledge of where these two people come from and their values and their upbringing and their ups and their downs and their loves and their losses, it really makes you feel for the characters a lot more, I think, and in a different way from a TV story as well.
Yeah, I think that's the thing you get. That what's lovely about getting the chance to do the novelisation is you can put in all that stuff that can only ever be backstory in your head, and would just slow the pace so much because you don't really want to sit with characters that aren't the core characters when you're watching your TV episode. But the novelisation is like, well, okay, you're steeped in all things who you know that, so we can now give you this extra stuff as well. You can only get in the novel.
When the call came in about doing Fires for the Target range, what did you think?
Well, I'd already been in touch with them a year before, because there was a batch of the novels had come out the year beforehand, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I just thought, oh, I wonder if they'll want me to do Pompeii at some point. And then I didn't think about it for a few days, and I suddenly thought, if they do, surely they would ask me first, wouldn't they? Would they give me first refusal? Surely
they would, wouldn't they?
I'm sure. But then I was like, well, maybe they'd assumed that I wouldn't want to do it. So I thought, I better just let them. So I actually got in touch and I said, I don't know if you're doing it, but just in case you do one day, Please just keep in mind that I would love to do it.
Here,
So ask me first, please, because I don't want to go to somebody else because I was too embarrassed to mention it. So they went, okay, thank you very much. And I was like, okay, that was that. They'll never come back to me. And then they eventually did, and they said, yeah, we're doing a new batch, and we want to do Pompeii if you want to do it. So I said, yes, please. So maybe they would have asked, maybe they wouldn't, but
you put your hand up anyway.
Doesn't hurt, just in case.
Yeah,
because there have been a few things where people have gone, oh, well, I thought you wouldn't have wanted to do it, and I'd be like, I'd have loved to do that. So there's been quite a few of those things.
Did you used to read some of the old Target books from sort of 70s and 80s? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like there was, because I grew up in the 70s and 80s. So for some of those, most of those stories, they were the only way I could get to watch it in inverted commas, and some of the older ones as well. Like they would never repeat them.
No, that's right. Yeah, the Target books is all we had.
When I was watching, it was either Tom Baker or Peter Davison.
Yeah.
No, it must have been Tom Baker because he didn't change until I'd moved from that house. I'm trying to remember the house I was in. But yeah, I was watching the Tom Baker series, and they were repeating some of the Patrick Troughton stories at the same time on a different channel, sort of just afterwards. So I was watching some of his old stories. But yeah, there were loads that I knew that I would never get to see. I didn't know at the time the episodes had been wiped, but I used to love them. Scouring the library, going to second-hand shops, just desperately trying to find more Target books.
Yeah, and you get that sort of thrill of excitement when you see one that you haven't had before, that you haven't read, that you could buy or rent, or, borrow from the library.
Absolutely.
Yeah, permanent loan.
Yeah, completely.
So James, obviously I'm aware you got your hands full there a little bit. So we've got one or two more questions for you.
Yeah, go for it.
Have you got any other Doctor Who work lined up at the moment?
I have. I'm doing a couple of audio things for a company that I cannot name.
Does it start with B and end in ig finish?
I can't confirm that. It does. It rhymes with fig binish. It's funny whenever I sort of try and kind of be coy about it. I go, I'm doing an audio, and
straight away.
Like, well, what other company is there?
It's Big Finish or BBC Audio.
Yeah, exactly. I'm doing a couple of for them. I've done one that's been partially recorded, and they're recording the rest of it either later this year. And I've just done a draft of another one for a different Doctor. And I've just started one for a third Doctor, not the third Doctor, a third Doctor. So I'm doing three different Doctors.
Can you tell us anything about which Doctors?
I cannot. I literally have been told not to. I shouldn't even have said that. I can't say anything.
No, that's fair enough. That's we'll look out for those. That'll be quite exciting.
But you'll probably one of them you'll probably guess because it's the one I grew up with. So
okay,
brilliant.
Right.
But that won't be out for ages.
Yes, that'll be for a few years then, won't it? Yeah.
How does it feel having your name, your work, kind of as part of that vast library of stuff that you grew up with?
Oh, it's bonkers. It's really bonkers. When I opened I got my author copies of the book. The other day,
I was going to say I saw your picture and you were obviously very excited. Yeah.
I really but I genuinely I just opened it and saw them all, and I just burst into tears because it just felt like it's such a big thing for me because these books were part of my childhood. They're part of my life. And I had the same reaction with when I first saw the finished episode of the show. Just watching it on a tiny little screen in the Mill Studios. Just in one of their little, it wasn't even a screening room, it was a little cupboard. So I was sort of sitting sideways watching it on a tiny screen, and just like in floods of tears at just what an amazing job everybody had done. Literally everyone else makes you look good on that. But yeah, just seeing your name on something that's been part of your life since you were a kid, it's a literal childhood dream. Yeah, it's absolutely insane.
And that's even despite all the other stuff you've written as well, because obviously it's not just Doctor Who, is it? I mean, I was my youngest daughter Freya, she was watching two of your works, Eve, which we both loved. Actually, for CBBC.
I loved that show. Really, that was so much fun.
I don't think we ever quite got to the end of it. I think it sort of disappeared, or we ended up doing other things. But And then there was the Spartacle mystery as well, wasn't it? Which is
Oh
quite
yeah,
fun.
yeah, that was great fun.
Yeah,
that was a
yeah.
lovely show to work on. Really lovely people. Just a really nice bunch, nice writers' room, and Spartacle's I got to do some really fun stuff with Spartacle. That was the show where I got my draft back with the note. Can you put more slapstick in?
Oh really?
And I was like, yes, I can. I am the exactly right person that you could ask that of.
Yeah.
Eve was great. Carry on with Eve, because I did a really bonkers episode for series 3.
Oh, Eve was fantastic.
It's basically a Groundhog Day one where she's using her internal kind of logic predictor to try and sort of play out every outcome of what's about to happen.
Yeah.
So she's sort of frozen for a split second while the entire episode runs through her head, and she goes through all these different. So it's like Groundhog Day kind of scenario, but it's so wacky, and she's hilarious. Poppy is just amazing.
Yeah.
I'd say she's like a 20-year-old female Buster Keaton. She's just got this real comedy face.
Yeah,
Where she can do this sort of deadpan look.
So
she's
kind of switch on the
hilarious.
robot kind of thing, just
Absolutely,
like in a second
yeah.
she's there.
She's she was just hilarious, and just I threw in a bit of her singing Yankee Doodle Dandy, and I was like, because I knew she could do it. I knew she would just fully commit to it, and she's amazing.
So when you're writing the dialogue for these guys, there's no difference in your head that you're writing for younger people. You're giving them the same sort of challenges as you would for adults.
Oh yeah,
pros.
yeah. I mean, I think it's harder for kids stuff sometimes because they will spot stuff that you could probably get away with in an adult show. Like they'll see right through it. So you've got to be really you've got to be much cleverer to do a kids thing or pretend to be cleverer. But the themes and the weight of it is just as hefty, sometimes more, because the first meeting on Spartacle, it was my first proper kids show, and they were talking about some plot thing, and they said, and of course, obviously we can't show people being killed or threatening to be killed on screen, so we can't do this thing, and I just went, oh God, I hadn't thought about that. And I was like, well, that's all my ideas out the window.
Scratch that episode.
So it's because, and you think about it, it's so easy to have a character on screen threaten somebody with a sword or a gun or something. It's like, oh, that's instant easy jeopardy. But when you can't do that, you have to really kind of dig in and go, oh wow, what's the equivalent for kids?
So you have to be more creative, I suppose, don't you? And then find different ways for these threats to be made manifest.
What's the emotional torture you can do, which is much worse than actual torture, I think. Yeah. So that just sounds terrible, doesn't it? It's just like, how do I emotionally torture?
We might use that as a soundbite.
Children.
That's one of those things that you take out of context. So it's wrong.
James discusses emotional torture
for adolescents.
Even in context, it's not great, is it?
But that's the writer's gene, though, isn't it? You've got to think of these threats and jeopardies and how your characters get through them.
Oh, completely, yeah. And you're sort of fighting with yourself because you're like, right, how do I hurt and kill these people? And then it's like, right, how do I stop that from happening? And now how do I counteract the hero stopping that? And just this weird back and forth, trying to outwit yourself. And if you're not very clever, then it's not that easy. In fact, for that second Eve episode, the Groundhog Day one, I distinctly remember I was just in the middle of typing halfway through the first draft, and I just stood up and just grabbed my head and I just went, I shouted like really loud, I was like, I don't understand my own plot. It's too difficult. And there was no one in the building, and I just sort of stood there and I went, and just sat down and carried on typing. So like, no one's going to fix it for you. So
it's all down to you, James. Nobody else.
It is.
Last question for you then. So, what's next for you at the moment, other than the aforementioned Who,
which we can't talk about?
Yeah. I've just handed in a draft of a 2-part audio. I've just started a 1-part audio. The very first one that's half recorded, that's all done from my end. Just started that. I'm doing. What can I say? I'm doing another episode of an animated show.
Ooh.
Which I'm really excited about. I'm doing 2 episodes of a new teens series, which is they've just had the first series on CBBC.
Yeah.
So I'm doing 2 episodes of season 2. So
Great.
that's not really a clue because there's loads of stuff on YouTube.
Yeah, I was just trying to think what might I know.
Oh, there's tons.
Yeah.
Lots of things I'd love to do. So I've just handed in the first draft of the second episode of that.
So you're keeping busy, really busy.
Yeah, busy. Yeah,
I have this year. Yeah,
it's a good job you're a fast typer.
Yeah,
super fast, super temp. And it was sort of weirdly quiet last year, and then this year it's suddenly all sort of kicked off again. But that's the job, really.
That's the way it is sometimes. Yeah,
things go quiet, and then it all kicks off, and then the last 4 things that I worked on, weirdly they all had deadlines the same week. And they're different companies, different people. They've never spoken to each other, never met, but it just always seems to work out that way.
It's just the way the universe happened at that point.
Yeah,
it really is. Yeah, so I had to do some very quick sort of scheduling and moving stuff around. It's like when you got bills, overdue bills.
Yeah.
It's like which one can I pay? Which one should I pay first?
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, James. And if anyone has not yet picked up their copy of Fires of Pompeii,
do so.
Do so. I highly recommend it. It was great to kind of rediscover the story and dive a bit deeper into it. And I really enjoyed spending my evenings over the last weekend with 10th Doctor and Donna again in spectacular adventure.
Not as much as I enjoyed spending time with them again. They're just an absolute pleasure to write. Donna, I could write all day, every day for the rest of my life, and nothing else, and I'd be happy.
Yeah, she's so great. I love the Epcot joke in the book, and the episode as well. That's a Russell special joke, though. Whenever someone picks out a joke that they love, if it's one of his, I can't steal the credit for it.
Yeah, it's Russell.
He'd find out.
Annoyingly.
He'd find out, yeah.
Oh no, it's fine because it just again it all makes me look good. So it's all. That's what he does.
It's a great chat, James. Thank you so much for spending time with us, and
no worries.
Hi to your daughter as well, who's made her presence felt on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, little one. She's been well behaved.
Yeah, it's been brilliant.
She's a pretty good kid. Yeah, mostly.
Yeah. Good luck with school as well.
Thank you.
How did you approach writing the novelisation of it? And was there something different that you wanted to achieve with it? And also, can I ask, when the call came in about doing it, what did you think? What was your reaction?
Jeff always does this, by the way, Rona. He always asks 2 questions for one, right?
And chucks in a bonus third. Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing, actually. Yeah, I must stop doing this. Yeah, sorry.
When the call came in, my first thought was, don't have time. I really don't have time, especially by Christmas. And then I will admit, I didn't realise, because you know that your rights to the story are it's basically the BBC's property, isn't it? To an extent. So I must admit, having not going back to the small print of my contract, I thought, if I say no, someone else will do it. And I thought, I don't want someone else to do it. So I thought, I've got to try.
Yeah.
And then actually approaching writing it, I had a conversation with Jenny Colgan, who's an amazing writer, who's done quite a lot of the Target novelisations. And she was really helpful because she said it's really simple for you because you've got your TV episodes, you've got your plot. So all it's about is putting in the backstories, putting on all the things that they didn't give you the budget or the time for, and job done. And that's pretty much, she was right. It was
Did you find it quite an easy process then? Was it quite easy to write? Or is that in inverted commas?
And I think had it not, so if the Target editors had not welcomed what I did, I would have been in deep trouble.
So what the blazes is this? What have you done?
Then I would have been up the proverbial creek. But I think another thing that helped me was because it was very much always this evocation of this natural world and people's relationship to this natural world and the seasons. And really, we were still coming out of the second sort of set of big lockdowns. So at that point, I'd been a year and a half in lockdown in a very, very beautiful rural place, which is where I live and where I was brought up in a place like that. and I'd really reconnected to the importance of that, and particularly my love of crows. I got a bit obsessed with all corvids in not corvids, what do you call them? Corvids.
Corvids,
Yeah, during lockdown, I got a bit obsessed about it. And you see the great flocks of them. Where I'm sitting now, I'm looking out over kind of woods and hills, and you see them moving at sunset and dawn. They're all coming out in these great flocks.
Yeah.
And they travel terrific distances. And also places that are rookeries have often been rookeries for hundreds of years.
Right?
If nobody disturbs it and fells the trees. There's one over in Dumfries and Galloway, which has been a known rookery for getting on for 800 years.
Wow.
And you can see it sometimes in place names. They'll have,
of course,
and I really got completely. I mean, as you can tell from the episode, I was already quite interested in them, but I got completely obsessed, and I was doing the thing because you don't know where they're going, but what you have to do is as the sun sets, you can see them start to stream across the sky. So if you kind of run along the road behind them, you can find out where they're going, where these huge rookeries are. So I was doing a bit of that as well.
Anyway, the expression "as the crow flies."
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a very long-winded way of saying that I was. I had these kind of minor lockdown obsessions.
I think we probably all did, didn't we?
Yeah.
But that's a particular obsession that really adds some flavour and depth to the novel as well, doesn't it? Because it's like the corvids, right? Because that's a term I only learned after reading your novel. I had to look up what it was, but it's almost like they're a kind of a chorus on the narrative. You know, they kind of they precede it, they end it, they're there throughout, kind of just sort of weaving into the narrative flow, or like that kind of chorus does in sort of medieval plays, the Greek plays, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and they know more than anyone else.
Yes, that's it. But they're not telling everything.
No, and that limited vocabulary.
Indeed, Gate.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing I can see Stephen Moffat actually taking and running with into some crazy bonkers areas if he was allowed to. Talking crows.
Do you remember they had robot crows at the Tower of London for the unit base, didn't they? In
they did.
The Doctor, I think. Yeah. So maybe these ones are similar, come back in time or something. Yeah.
Something like that.
So Rona, we're aware that your time is a little bit limited.
Yeah,
so we've just got maybe 2 questions left, I think, Paul. So we've got one here from the Devon on Twitter, who's at Devon the. Obviously, Jodie's time is coming to an end, but would you write a story for the 13th Doctor if you could?
I think I'd never turn down an opportunity to write for Doctor Who ever.
Great answer.
But it always has to be the right story, obviously. But I'd never not want to.
Brilliant. Do you have a little set of ideas banked that could be good Doctor Who stories?
No. Well, probably. Yes.
We've gone from to yes.
That's got you thinking now, isn't it?
Because I was just thinking, because it's been quite interesting on this conversation to have to revisit how we came up with Aegis of Light, and in that sense, yes.
I was going to ask, but I thought I'd thrown too many questions at you back then. But I wondered what other ideas were pitched and floating around back then. Yeah.
Well, it's also, I think, just realising what the steps were to find that. It's not like I've always got things where I go, I haven't found a place for that yet. So I would certainly have a lot I would be trying to offer up.
So the fuel is all there. It just needs to be, just needs a vessel to pour it into.
Exactly.
There you go. That'll help you out there. Yeah. So what's next on the horizon for you, Rona?
Well, very excitingly, I wrote some stage plays back in 2014 that had then quite a large further life, but they were it was a trilogy of plays of the first 3 Stuart actually not first 3 Stuart kings, that doesn't matter, 3 Scottish kings with the name James, so James I, James II, James III, and it was to really make a period of Scottish history that's completely invisible to everybody visible, and make it very contemporary. and make it very accessible. And it was sort of inspired by having a huge prejudice against Shakespeare and then seeing Shakespeare's history plays done well and realising how accessible they are when they're done well, because obviously they were made for ordinary people.
Absolutely.
They weren't made for
Yeah.
academic degrees. And also the other thing that struck me was all we know about that period of history is in popular imagination, you know, comes from those plays. Right or wrong, it sort of starts with those plays, and we didn't have an equivalent in Scotland. So very arrogantly, I thought, oh, well, I'll try and do them. So I did the first 3, and I've got another 2 coming out. We go into rehearsal in August.
Yeah.
And then James IV, Queen of the Fight, opens at the end of October. And then a play about Mary Queen of Scots opens a few weeks after that.
Yeah, I think one of our Twitter friends is going to see one of the shows, Gail Ramage. So yeah, she said she wanted to let you know that she was going. So
that's
I can't remember which show it is off the top of my head, but yeah, so she's looking forward to that. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm really pleased to hear it.
Yeah. So, Rona, we should probably let you go, as no doubt you've got a busy day as well, and probably more interviews and things to do as well. But thank you so much for taking the time.
I'm going for a train. I'm going to be travelling down south to you guys, who are, I believe, sweltering in 30 degrees.
It's pretty warm out there, yeah.
I'm missing aircon in the office here.
Fantastic. Yeah. Rona, thank you so much for your time. We really enjoyed our conversation, and we look forward to seeing more stuff from you as time goes on. And of course, Rona's novel, The Eaters of Light, is out from 14th of July, so it may actually be available by the time you're listening to this podcast. Yes, so by the time
you're listening, you can go to Amazon or your local bookstore and pick up a copy. You won't regret it, so enjoy it.
It's a super book.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you, Rona.
Thank you.
Thanks as always for listening. We hope you've enjoyed our chats with James and Rona in this episode. Their 2 Target novels are now available. Paul's told me to tell you that you can get them online or in physical shops.
Actual bookshops. Support your independent bookshops.
So do go pick them up if you haven't already. And if you have read them or you're going to be reading them, do tweet us and let us know what you think of them. And we hope you've enjoyed them. So, brilliant. Thanks as always, everyone. And we'll catch you next time.
Thank you, listeners.
Corner.
Thank you for listening. Bye for now.
Bye.